Welcome to the Comedy Reset Spotlight. This is the place to be if you want to hear from some of the most innovative and exciting comedy creators from around the globe. On this podcast, you'll hear from a variety of guests who are pushing the boundaries of what comedy can be. If you're looking for fresh perspectives and new ideas, this is the podcast for you.
Episode 21. New York City comedian Ellen Orchid.
When did you first start doing stand-up comedy?
I started doing stand-up comedy when I was in medical school. I was looking for an activity that was fun, and I was on the campus at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, which was a 6-year program, combined degree program, MD, PhD program. Actually took me 7 years, but at least I finished it. And the advantage of getting both degrees is they paid your tuition. So I didn't have to pay tuition, which at the time I think was like $9,000 a year, which sounds too low. But anyway, if you went for both degrees, they were trying to prepare you to be a medical scientist, someone who had the medical degree and research degree. So it was an investment by the United States government. And I got in. There were only 2 women out of 7 in my year, and from a pool of about 700 applicants. So I was always a very good student, and I got all A's in college. I went to a college in Maryland called Goucher College. Goucher, like rhymes with voucher. It was used to be all women, the sister college of Johns Hopkins, and it's in Baltimore. Actually, Johns Hopkins is in Baltimore, but Goucher, the sister school, was in Towson, which is a suburb of Baltimore. And for me, it really wasn't a good choice, but I got through it. I didn't like that it was all women. It was very lonely. I got a good scholarship. My mother thought I should stick it out, so I finished it. I finished in 3 years by going to summer school, so I got out of there, and I got good grades, but socially it was kind of a bust. Anyway, but I got into Einstein, this combined degree program, what they call the medical scientist training program, and I finished it. And I started in 1974, and then I was looking for an activity to do that was fun, that would get me off the campus, which was in the Bronx. And I saw this ad on the back of the Village Voice for a stand-up comedy class run by a lady named Lisa Carmel. And I don't know if Lisa's still around, but she was a very good teacher, and she rented a studio somewhere on the Upper West Side, one of these Ripley Greer studio rentals. And I went, and I just loved it. And I loved writing jokes and telling jokes. And she told us to go out at night and go to open mics, and I did. And I used to go to this open mic called Good Times, which a lot of people remember. It was on East 33rd and 3rd, or as we say in Brooklyn, or as we used to, toity-toid and toyed. Anyway, the club was on the ground floor, and it was all glass, right on the corner. So you had people walking by and staring in. The stage was right near the window, so you could get heckled inside and out. Very funny, but I remember being extremely nervous going up there with, sweaty palms and diarrhea, very nervous, but that all, with time, that goes away. My first joke was something like, we're dissecting cadavers in gross anatomy, and we named our cadaver Ernest so we could tell our parents we were working in dead earnest, which I still think is hilarious. A little grim, but hilarious. And I like to say, you got extra credit if you could figure out the cause of death of your poor cadaver there. And since our medical school was in the Bronx, that made it easier. It came down to find the bullet hole. So I lived in the Bronx for 7 years, first in a dorm room and then in a rental in the neighborhood. And, the neighborhood was called Morris Park, sort of a nice Italian neighborhood. And I'm very glad I got through it. And medical school is, a lot of memorizing. Anyway, getting to take Lisa Carmel's class, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. I loved it. And I've been doing it ever since. Um, and trying to get better at it. And it really is the kind of thing you have to go out every night and break down all that fear and resistance and just keep doing it. And I didn't go out every night at first, but now, more recently, I'm doing it much more consistently, and reaping the benefits and really enjoying it. Just love it.
What made you want to become a stand-up comedian?
I really love making people laugh. It's that simple. I love making people laugh, and it started at home. I used to love to make my parents laugh, and my mother was very funny. She was hilarious, and my father was very funny. And to make them laugh was they had big laugh, big responsive laugh, and you just felt so great when you could make them laugh. And my parents were pretty serious people. They were academics. I was one of three daughters. I was the middle one. And they had lost their very first child, who was also a daughter, very tragically. She died at age 1 from pneumonia that swept through her in a week, and it was just horrible. It's horrible to lose a child under any circumstances, but your first one, it's all the excitement and the investment. And then my parents were very careful, responsible people. And then this poor little girl, Nina Louise Weinberg, she got a cold, and they just couldn't manage it. They brought her to the hospital, and it turned into pneumonia, and she died after a week. It was just a devastating thing. And both my parents were very shattered. And I'm glad the marriage survived. I think it was touch and go for a while. Of course, they were both very depressed. And then they somehow rallied and managed to have 3 more daughters, which I think is an amazing testament to their strength. And I don't know why they had only daughters, but one curious thing, my mother's younger sister, Judy, also had 3 daughters. So a lot of X chromosomes there, a lot of gutsy X chromosomes going around. X chromosomes on my dad's part and my uncle's part. But anyway, making people laugh. And then my parents loved to laugh. And they loved to watch the Ed Sullivan Show, which was on Sunday nights at 8. And we would just sit down on the carpet in the living room in front of the Zenith, the big Zenith console, the old TV sets, and we would watch the Ed Sullivan Show with Stiller and Mira, Joan Rivers, Robert Klein, Jay Leno, Jackie Mason, Toady Fields. Remember Toady Fields, Phyllis Diller, a young Jay Leno. I especially loved Robert Klein. I thought he was so attractive. And I also loved Jay Leno. I thought he was very attractive and hilarious. And love those guys. Just love them. And the cleverness, the Borscht Bell comics, Milton Berle and Freddie Rome and those guys. Especially Stiller and Mira. I always strongly related to. My parents loved them. And then I would watch this show at 1 o'clock during the week called Fun at 1, and Soupy Sales. Remember Soupy Sales? I just thought he was hilarious and adorable. And making people laugh. I did a lot of stupid things at home to try to make people laugh. I also remember reading Mad Magazine. I loved Mad Magazine. And I remember a lot of the things I read. The jokes in Mad Magazine. Hilarious. Just, I loved it. And I got a lot out of it. And I never thought of it as, you could actually make a living doing this. But my parents were very academic, and they didn't have a lot of money. And they said, you're going to have to get scholarships and you have to get A's or very high grades, and there's no two ways about it. So, but nobody said, you love comedy, be a comic, because that was always seen as, how do you do that? And we didn't have a showbiz family or showbiz connections. The closest thing to showbiz was my father. He had 2 jobs to support his family. He did work for the New York City parking meter division, and there was a whole division to collecting the coins from the old parking meters. You'd put in a quarter and turn the dial. Well, they had a whole system for collecting it, and he was a manager in the collections department. But that was his day job for a pension. But at night, he was a musician, and he would go out and play the piano and accordion at various functions at least 2 or 3 days a week, in addition to his full-time job. And the rest of the time he was resting or showering, and my mother was always saying, be quiet, Daddy's sleeping, be quiet. She was like the main parent, and he was like the satellite parent that would do all the money earning. And she was the full stay-at-home mom. And boy, she did a hell of a job. She was like perfectionist and so organized and very neat and clean and brilliant. She was the only one of her sisters that went to college. She went to Hunter College in the 40s and was a math major. She was in the same class as Bella Abzug, who was an early feminist. Anyways, I really was very lucky to have a mom who was a stay-at-home mom and gave me all the benefit of her brilliance. As I put in my act, she gave me her undivided attention and a lot of quantity time. And a lot of that quantity time was also quality time, to be fair. But she was very frustrated that she didn't get out of the house. She was not encouraged to have a career. This was before the feminist movement, so she got gypped. She really got gypped, because if she came along now with that brain of hers, that Lamborghini brain, with that IQ and that intuition, she really could have gone very far. And I mean, I always think my fantasy is that she would have gone to law school and then become a judge and even risen up the ranks to be like a Supreme Court judge. That was how smart she was. So smart. Anyway, so comedy was very important. My parents always used to make jokes. They used to laugh at all kinds of things. They'd make fun of things. They said things like when I was in medical school, I was complaining to my father that I was very bored and depressed because there's a lot of memorizing. It's just memorizing. I said, I can't study anymore. I had a radiology final. You have to look at these x-rays and this big, big textbook. I said, I'm just so tired. I can't study this anymore. He said, just look at the pictures. Just look at the pictures, which I thought was hilarious. And my parents were very frugal, not cheap, but frugal, because literally my father had a civil service job, didn't make a lot of money, and he had to have extra work as a musician. And whenever we would have to spend money on something, my mother would make a joke. Like if we had to buy a Hallmark card and the card was expensive, she'd say, we're putting Hallmark's kids through college. And anyway, I thought she was hilarious. She would sing, when we were kids, she would sing lullabies, but the lullabies were not just like rockabye and goodnight. She would sing lullabies that were commercials. Like there was a Savarin coffee commercial, and she would sing that like a lullaby, which I think is hysterical. And it would go like, Savarin's blended to forgive, coffee making mistakes. Why drink coffee that's on and offy? Savarin as always, the coffeer coffee. I mean, and I'd be sitting on her lap and she'd be rocking me back and forth to the Savarin commercial. And just, like beautiful people, loving people, kind people, honest people. I'll tell you how honest my father was. He worked in the department where they collect quarters for the parking meters, and there was an investigation at one point, and a lot of people in his office turned out to have been stealing quarters from the machines, and only 2 people were totally cleared of any charges, and that was my father and one other guy. So that was very great. My parents were very proud of that. So they were honest and kind and generous and loving. And then you go out in the world and you're not insulated anymore. And I've been meeting a lot of really shitty people since then, real shitheads. And my parents did not prepare me for that. They weren't saints, but I'm just saying, taken a few hits since then, body blows emotionally from some. I was very naive and trusting, and I've met some real bozos, some in power, and some just schmucks socially that I met that have hurt me, and I learned a lot and toughened up, which is good for the world, to live in the world. Okay, so that's why I wanted to become a stand-up comedian.
Who were some of your influences?
My influences were first the handful of comics on the Ed Sullivan Show, Joan Rivers, not just then, but in all her iterations afterwards, all the ways she's evolved and she got more crass and just the way her delivery. She's one of those people. She was one of these people that had this great manic delivery that just pulled the laughter out of you. It almost didn't matter what she was saying. Her timing, her energy, the rhythm that you got swept into just pulled the laughter out of you, and her boldness. And, she started out very self-deprecating, with jokes like how ugly she was. And of course she wasn't ugly. Last single girl before Freeway, that seemed to be the way in those days, to be very self-deprecating. I loved her. And, she went to Barnard College and she was very accomplished, and her dad was a doctor. And I'm so glad she found her way into comedy, because she could have done anything else. She could have gone to law school or med school or anything. But I'm glad she followed her heart. And her real name was Joan Malinsky. And just, to me, if I had to pick one, that's the one. For me and for many women comics, I just love her. And I when I need to get in the zone to write jokes, I just watch her videos on YouTube. I know I read a lot about her. She had the guts to be a talk show host, and I'm sure that wasn't easy, but she just had balls and guts and wanted it so much. And I have to say, I honestly want it that much. And I don't know if people know me that well to know that, but I really do. I'm crazy about this, and there's nothing else that I want more. And I've done the medical school thing, and that doesn't compare, even at the level that I am now, which is not Joan Rivers level. But I know she loved acting, and really originally wanted to be a serious actress. And I love acting too. But she had this special comedy knack, which was really how she made her money. I just loved her, and the fact that she could design jewelry and be on QVC and keep reinventing herself and being entrepreneurial and creating these shows with her daughter, Melissa. And she had a good relationship with producers in England, and she did a lot of shows in England. And just brilliant, so brilliant and adaptable. A real survivor. And, she lost her husband to suicide, and what a horrible ordeal that was. And how she survived that. She's my heroine, absolute heroine, because, go through life, you have to survive things. I've survived some terrible things, but I know that, surviving the suicide of your husband like that was just a hideous, heartbreaking thing, the way it happened. It was so unfair, what they did to her in her talk show at Fox and so forth. In any event, she was very self-deprecating. Another comic that I like, Rita Rudner, who's the opposite. She's not self-deprecating. I find her very interesting. She's so smart. She doesn't put herself down for the most part. She always looks elegant. And her jokes are so great. And I think she has really good self-esteem. And George Carlin, I used to watch him on Ed Sullivan. And he used to do the Hippy Dippy Weatherman. And we had all those albums. And to see him, he was a real straight arrow, and he did all those Catholic school jokes. and then how he evolved and became like a hippie with his long hair, and then really political and very angry. I learned a lot from him. I love his routine about having capital punishment on TV, and it would be like the lottery, but instead of numbers going down the chutes like the ping pong balls in the lottery, that would be heads. He's so extreme that it just kills me. I feel like he evolved to the max, which is so great, and he just kept going. Interestingly, he died on the same day that my father died, which was June 8th. No, I'm sorry, June 22, 2008. But anyway, it's just a coincidence. Stiller and Mirror, that great comedy. It's hard to find a partner, and they were just so lovable. Wanda Sykes is someone I'm really fond of. I love her. She has a Netflix special called Not Normal. I just love her brains, her guts. She tells it like it is. She maintains her dignity. And, she's a survivor too. I like people that had a double mastectomy for breast cancer. That had to have been hellish. She got through that. Just great. Fully herself. Completely herself. She owns her journey, if you want to put it like that. She's African American, gay. Just love how honest she is. And I always feel that time watching her is well spent, and I come out smarter. I learn from her. I love to watch Netflix specials. Another person I admire is Chris Rock. I love the way he repeats himself. He has the same thing twice. He paces the stage. I was once in a class taught by Tommy Koenig, and he said, pick a comic and imitate them. And I picked Chris Rock, and I would just pace the stage and just say the same things over and over again, the same jokes twice. I just love his joke where he has one joke where he talks about a church lady whose feet are kind of swollen and filling out over the top of her shoe. He said it was like a loaf of bread baked in her shoe. Like people's feet that are a little, like they're heavy and it overflows the shoe. Just thought that was poetry. When I was in college, I was an English major and a pre-med major. I was a double major. I just studied all the time. I got a 4.0 index in college. But if you studied all the time, you'd probably do it too. But anyway, my point is, what was my point? English major. I wrote a lot of poetry in college. I actually won 2 poetry prizes. And I don't really write poetry anymore, but I like stand-up jokes, writing jokes better than poems because of the laugh at the end. Poetry really, I love words and writing poetry, and I've written some good poems, but writing a good joke with the laughter is like the super bonus at the end. So I prefer joke writing. But the skills are not that different. I think, you really got to have a sensitivity to words and the nuances between words, which I do. And my father was like that. He was a very good Scrabble player. Both my parents were very well read, would read all the time, not just the newspapers, but books, novels, very well read. And anyway, so what else? So many comics. I like Trevor Noah, his earlier specials, and his facility for doing language and doing different accents and impersonations is just remarkable. His imitation of Barack Obama kills me. He's a very gifted guy. His last special, he was so angry. I thought his anger, however valid it might be from whatever he went through in South Africa, it might be perfectly valid, but it was a little over the top for me, a little scary. But anyway, he's so gifted. I like Jerry Seinfeld a lot. My favorite Jerry Seinfeld joke, and what can you say, his productivity, he's so prolific, but one of his favorite routines of mine is where he talks about how can you be sure that the date on the milk carton is the exact date that the milk expires? I mean, how do they know it's the exact date? And he does this act out where he pretends to be a cow, and he's in profile with his left profile, and he turns over his left shoulder and he goes, July 14th. Just the way he does it, that kills me. A lot of his stuff seems very impersonal to me. But it's getting more personal as he's married and has kids, and I like when he talks about his family. I love his jokes about his family and his kids, and I went to see him at the Beacon Theater. He does this residency. The energy is just, through the roof, and it's very good. And I also love his joke where he says he has all these same friends and he keeps giving them advice and they never listen to him. And he goes, what's the point of getting new friends? He'll just ride it out with these same idiots, which I thought was hilarious. He's just great. I mean, I love his show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I devoured that. I really enjoyed that. A lot of spontaneous things happened. I like Jay Leno. I met Jay Leno. Curiously, I was very lucky. I want to tell this story. I love Jay Leno because he's so sturdy and consistent, and his jokes are clean, and he just kept cranking them out on The Tonight Show. And he had a team of writers, and I read that, night after night, they would tape a show, and then they'd go to his house and stay up for hours writing jokes. His work ethic, to just keep cranking them out. You have to have a certain stability, rigidity, discipline, and he's got it. He seemed like a guy, he would always wear the same thing, like a denim shirt and denim pants to his rehearsals. But anyway, here's how I met him. I was a psychiatrist, and I worked for 10 years at Coney Island Hospital, which is in South Brooklyn, and it's a city hospital. And some people there knew I did comedy, and nobody cared. And one day I was in the elevator with some acquaintances from the clinic, and they said, how's it going? And I said, I'm fine. I'm still doing comedy. And just for fun, you know how you kibitz in an elevator? I was feeling like I have nothing to lose. So I was in an elevator with some people from the psych department, which they call behavioral health because they're trying to reduce the stigma. Anyway, and I said something like, anybody know Letterman or Leno? I want to get on one of these shows. And that's when both those shows were on, Letterman and Leno. And one of them said, well, Donna Leno Gordon is Jay Leno's cousin, and she's a nurse here. And, my chin fell on the floor. I went, what? What? She was a nurse in the psychiatric department. And she was very well respected because she was super smart, organized. She was high up in the nursing administration. And he said, you didn't know Donna Leno Gordon. So, of course, I found her. I introduced myself. And I happened to be going out to California for a vacation or something. I said, could you possibly help me get a ticket to this Tonight Show taping? This was when, tonight he was hosting the Tonight Show. And she did exactly that. And I went to a taping, and then afterwards, most people left, and some people lingered down front to meet him, and there were security guards, and you couldn't go up to him. But she got my name on a short list, and I was able to introduce myself to him. And my impression of him, he's tall, he's 6 feet at least, very masculine guy, Scottish Italian, but confident. He put his arm out to give me a little hug. He put his arm around me, and I stood next to him, and someone took a picture. And he, just approachable and sturdy and not insecure, and just great. Just great. I found him very attractive and strong, and I like a real masculine guy, tall, macho guy. Anyway, he made a great impression on me, and I wrote him a fan letter after, and I sent him some jokes and whatever. So I like David Letterman, but David Letterman is, to my mind, is a little quirkier and offbeat. I have a Letterman story also. When I was first married and we had our daughter, we went to Coney Island on the day of the Mermaid Parade, which is in June, always on a Saturday in June. And that's a big event. Well, there was a camera crew walking around, and they took a video of me and my husband at the time, who was very, very overweight, unfortunately. We didn't know where the camera crew was from, but we didn't care. And I'm a ham, so I don't run away from a camera crew. I'll admit that. But they weren't labeled in any way. Well, believe it or not, we watched the Letterman show that night, and they had clips of people that they videoed at the Coney Island, one of those remote videos. And they showed me and my husband and our baby daughter in her carriage. And they made a joke out of it, and they said, this guy is the ride engineer, the ride manager, or the ride. So it was a fat joke. They made a fat joke at his expense, and he was clearly seen but not identified by name. And this was aired like 11:45 at night, that same night. And he started getting calls from his peers from his job saying, we just saw you on the Letterman show. And he was very upset and embarrassed. So he sued the Letterman show in small claims court, or saying, like, you didn't have the right to use my image without any kind of release form. We didn't give permission, and it was demeaning. And he had a point. Although it wasn't a great career move up for me, it didn't help my career with Letterman, although he didn't know anything about me or my comedy career. But anyway, that they we reached the lawyers, and my husband got a check for $1,500, and they agreed not to show that clip again. So I could say I was on the Letterman show, but I wasn't doing a comedy spot. It was sort of it was captured, and no, I can't say I was on the Letterman show. I was on once briefly in that clip. Anyway, I think that's probably enough of an answer to this. I have so many influences, so inspired by so many comics. Thank you.
What was your first time on stage like?
I went on stage as part of this class taught by Lisa Carmel in 1980, and went on stage at Good Times, this club on East 33rd and 3rd. A lot of people started out there, people I'm still in touch with. And it had a big glass window that faced the sidewalk on the north side of 33rd and on the avenue side of 3rd Avenue. So like I say, would get heckled inside the club and by people walking by. The people walking by would be waving. And the first time I was so nervous. It was like the way you feel before a big exam. Your heart pounding, my hands were freezing. I felt like I was, going to the guillotine. And I have since learned to calm myself. And, I had a set list, had my jokes written out in my pocket, and did all those corny jokes about being in medical school and working in Dead Ernest. We named our cadaver Ernest. And I loved it. And I loved watching the other comics. And I just knew I had to get better at this and keep going. And I just can't think of a better way to be happy and make a living.
What's your favorite joke?
My favorite joke, I have a few. And here's the first one. What's the difference between a mailbox and an elephant's behind? Of course, the person says, I don't know. What's the difference? And the punchline is, well, I'm not giving you any letters to mail. I just think that's hysterical. Another favorite joke I heard recently on a Zoom mic through the F Comedy Club. A comedian named Lance Mao, M-A-O, who lives in London, told this joke. He said he goes to a church. He's Chinese, and he goes to a church where everybody's Chinese, and they're always saying that everyone in the Bible is Chinese, including Jesus. And he says, I don't think Adam and Eve were Chinese. I know they weren't, because if they were, there's no way they would have eaten that apple. They would have stir-fried the snake. And then he goes, I know Noah was not Chinese. None of the animals would have made it onto the ark. Now, I think that's just hilarious. Just hilarious. And one of my favorite Joan Rivers jokes is she used to do this stuff where you talk about the Queen, how dowdy she dresses, how frumpy she looks. And she was going like, come on, you're so rich. If you own England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales, God damn it, shave your legs. those are some of my favorites. One of my favorite jokes that I wrote is Sigmund Freud, a genius. He discovered the subconscious. No one else was aware of it. It's one of my personal favorites. And another one of my favorites is marriage was hard. In my case, it started with a courtship, and that ship was headed right to court. Yes. So those are some of my favorites. There's so many more.
What's the worst heckler experience you've ever had?
A few years ago, actually many years ago, maybe in the 90s, I was in London and I went on stage at a comedy club in Leicester Square. And those people were really drunk and smoking. And I got on stage and I tried to jolly it through and connect to the audience. But a guy threw an ashtray at me, one of these big black plastic ashtrays, at least, like 8 inches across. And that's, very bad heckling. He yelled something, but it was the throwing of the thing that really scared me. It didn't hit me, but I got the message. And soon thereafter got off the stage. And trying to think if there are any other heckling. That was the worst.
What's the best gig you've ever had?
The best gig I ever had, well, I think the one on The View. And I was on The View in a segment called Hilarious Doctors with Ken Jeong, who went on to become very famous in the Hangover movies and also The Masked Voice or Masked Singer, and he went on to many other good things. I did well, and I went the distance, and I'd love to get a do-over because I think now I would be calmer and better. And it's very important to keep breathing. I was very nervous, and live television is nerve-wracking. And I got there too early, and I drank too much coffee. So a little too nervous. But now I know better, and I would pace myself better. But that was very exciting. Joy Behar was there. That was when Meredith Vieira was on the show, before Whoopi. Lisa Ling was on it. That was great fun. Another good gig I had was for Planned Parenthood in Pleasantville, New York. And I really enjoyed that. It was in a movie theater, and it was a nice theater with some good comics, like Regina DeChico. So I was in good company. And I had written this set of new jokes, raunchy jokes about birth control, specifically for the gig. And I really had a ball with it. And I had a lot of fun, and it was well received. And the material was, right on the topic, and the audience was great, and a very appreciative, fun-loving audience. They were very, very nice. So I really had a good time with that. So those are 2 gigs that stand out right now.
What's the worst gig you've ever had?
The very worst gig I ever had, the hell gig, was at a beach club this past summer, Atlantic Beach. It's a beautiful community, an upscale community, and they have a beautiful beach club. And they wanted to do a comedy night, and they hired a lot of comics, but the setup was really bad. They had a stage and a microphone and a dance floor and a couple of tables around the dance floor, maybe 3 or 4 tables could fit around the dance floor, but then all the majority of tables were just further and further away from the stage. And this beach club was in the flight path of the planes to the airport, JFK. And the planes just kept flying right over us. You could see the underbelly of the plane and the landing gear and everything. It was so freaking loud. So people were eating, and the waiters were serving, so that interrupted it. Plus, there were little kids. Little kids would wander to the stage area and like climb on the stage and play with the mic stand and try to grab the microphone wire. And I tried to do some crowd work with the kids and ask them their names, and some of them were just too small and too shy to answer. And I gave them some candy bars that I had, and that actually got the crowd's attention a little bit, or at least some of the parents left the tables and came to look at their kids and was starting to video their kids being in the show. But I tried to go up to tables and talk to people, but the majority of the audience was scattered, like so far down on tables that went, far down, far in advance, and then also to the right. And people were looking at their phones and eating and ordering food and getting up to use the bathroom. And it was a chaotic, horrible situation. And then it started with, it was still light out, and the lights started to fade, and some lights came on when it was dusk, and then it became dark and the lighting wasn't great, wasn't really on us. And it was very hard to keep the audience's attention. So I tried to slow down a little and be a little louder, and I did some song parodies, and that got a little bit of attention, but mostly you felt like you were fighting a losing battle. It was just too much else going on. People weren't really focused. And I watched the other comics, how they handled it. And I'm glad I didn't lose my cool, but it was a horrible experience. One comic, made fun of how, people weren't paying attention, said something like, well, you've been an audience, which I thought was very funny. But it seemed to start to go better for me when I talked with the kids, and some of the kids got on stage and they were very cute. But, then trying to get back into my material and talk to people, it was like riding a bucking bronco, one of those mechanical bulls. You get thrown off eventually. I would not do that again. But I survived.
How do you deal with stage fright?
I get very nervous before shows, especially ones where the stakes are higher. But I know that, so I know how to handle it at this point. I never drink wine. I'd never drink wine because that would throw off my timing. I did once years ago, like we're talking 2006. Once I had dinner before a thing, and I had a little wine, and it just doesn't work. You really need to focus, and I calm myself I go to a quiet place, quiet corner in the green room or wherever I can find it, and I do some slow, deep breathing, some circular breathing, hold my breath and exhale through the mouth to steady myself. And I also review my notes a lot. And I don't wait till the last minute to review my notes. I try to review like the day before, because I learned I'm the kind of person, everybody has their own process. I have to go over it a lot. Go over it, take a break, go over it again, take a break, and not just cram at the last minute. I also like to hear myself. If I can get in this space in the venue and get on the microphone and run the lines, and I try to picture the audience in there and try to run through the whole set, that works. That really calms me down, because I feel like I already did the show, and now I know it's, I hear myself. When you're nervous, you sort of feel like you're not in your body. So I have to wait. I have to calm myself till I really feel I'm in my body and present and not nervous. And I do that thing that's very stabilizing, where they say, look around the room and name 5 things that you see. So that puts you in the moment. I see a cup. I see a shoe. I see a mic stand. And if I still feel that there's a lot of nerves, I'll shake it out with my hands, or try to do a little dance, shake out the nerves. I like to dance and stretch, do some like yoga stretching, stretch my spine, my arms, rub my hands together, like really feel warmed up, feel in my body. And I also like to do a vocal warm up, like go from the bottom of my register to the top and do like, the warm up that you do before an acting job. You do like a siren. They call it the siren. You do all this kind of thing, and like you would warm up before singing, and you might, move your tongue around and move your tongue around clockwise and counterclockwise, and just like get into your body and get your voice warmed up. And, just think of Steve Rosenfield, as a comedy teacher, he used to say, always think about joyous communication. So I do that, try to, and, whatever you're going through, whatever mood you're in, you shake that off. And I always feel better. I love warming up and getting ready because, and then, you just do the best you can. And keep breathing. If you feel nervous or thrown off during the set, return to the breath, because it just takes a second to take a slow breath in through the nose and hold it for a few seconds, and it centers you. And I'm learning not to be afraid of silence and let there be silence. It's really just a few seconds. It might feel longer, but that's all it is. And it's the similar warm-up if you have an acting audition. I have to take the time to master nerves. I can't just come out of the car and go on stage. I need this preparation time. Some people don't or need less, but that works for me. And I always remind myself, I love the feeling after a good set. You feel such a high and you feel so connected to people, and you made some new friends in the audience and they come up and, oh, I really enjoyed you. You were so funny. I love being appreciated by maybe somebody that's a new stranger that I just met, who says, I like your stuff. You're so smart. I really like this one joke, or I get you. And I know not everyone is going to get you or appreciate your jokes, but when they do, the ones that do make it all worthwhile. And that's very satisfying. And there's no price on that. And that's why I'll do gigs for free. Though I think we need to phase that out at this point. Because a professional by definition gets paid, but I'm aiming for that. But anyways, I really have to I'm trying to work on not being frightened, and I've done therapy. I understand, why do I feel so frightened? Why do I feel insecure? I'm not new to this. I have a lot of experience. I keep getting more. And to feel valuable, feel like I'm bringing something of value, feel solid in myself, love myself. That's an ongoing thing that I struggle with. I'm not talking egotism. I just mean basic self-appreciation. People can tell you great things about yourself, and that always feels good. But to love yourself and feel anchored and stable, even when you get knocked around and people criticize you or reject you outright. Feeling good about myself, holding on to that sense of worth. I've been doing some affirmations and visualizations. And, that's a muscle you keep working on and get better at it very consciously. In therapy, when you do therapy, a lot of it is making the subconscious stuff conscious. The more you can do that, it's very freeing because it's there anyway, and it's going to impact you. So like to get it out and deal with it. Meditation also helps. And I found meditation extremely helpful and helps me focus on a task, on doing a set before I get up. And I found a meditation Zoom class that I do, and also some meditation videos on YouTube really helped me get into the zone. And you tell yourself, I'm a perfectionist in my own way and a bit of a workaholic. And people have said to me, you're a perfectionist, you're always beating yourself up, which is not good because it drains you. So I have to remind myself to say, look how far you've come and just keep going. Do not quit no matter what happens. And just look how far you've come You're just going to keep going and you'll get better. So it's positive self-talk, even if nobody else is saying anything and nobody else gives a damn, to be there for yourself. It's very important. So that also helps reduce stage fright.
What was the most unexpected response you've ever gotten to one of your jokes?
I had this joke where I say how lonely I am and I don't have a boyfriend, and I ride the subway and they have this announcement, a crowded subway car is no excuse for unwanted touching. And then I say, well, how about those of us? And usually I get a laugh because people they're right ahead of me. I don't have to say those of us who want a little unwanted touch. I say those of us. Usually I get a nice big laugh. Well, once I did this at a senior center in the Bronx, and a lady in the back, this African-American lady, most of the audience was Black or Hispanic, she said, nope. She looked at me, she goes, no, as if to say, no, we don't want unwanted touching, and no, not even in a joke, is unwanted touching okay? And so she said, nope. And I kind of liked that because I know she's right, but it killed the laugh. So that was unexpected, but it was authentic that she would say that. Because no, unwanted touching is not okay, and whatever her journey was, no, it's never okay, but I was just for the sake of the joke trying to be this pathetic person who would settle for unwanted touching, which I'm not really in real life. And I've had a little unwanted touching, and it was never good. And I'm learning to speak up about that, and I have spoken up about that. But I like that, moral compass. This lady was a moral compass, and she said, nope, no good. So you learn. You're always learning. Another funny response, unexpected response, not a bad response. I did another senior center on the Upper East Side, actually East Spanish Harlem, a place called Covello. And I was talking about who's a parent here, who's a parent in the audience. There was one guy in an audience full of women. There's usually a lot more women in these senior centers. And there's one guy in the back. I said, how many kids do you have? And he said, I don't know. The audience just died. And I said, what is your name, sir? And he said, Willie. And I said, how appropriate. The Willie in the room doesn't know how many kids he has. So, I mean, how funny is that? That's a gift. That's just a gift. I love when those unexpected things happen.
How do you prepare for a show?
I'm prepared for a show by writing out my set list and running through the jokes out loud. Usually not holding a mic, but out loud. Sometimes in front of a mirror. And sometimes I tape it, audio tape or videotape it. And I also have a mic stand and a mic at home, and sometimes I'll practice it like I'm on stage. And it would be better to have people to do it too, but at least I run it and I time it to make sure it's within time, allowing some breathing space for laughs so that I don't go over the time. Like I leave at least 30 seconds under, including some time for laughs. And I also, I try to get very dressed up in clothes that make me feel good. I have a dress that I particularly like. It really fits me. It's a Calvin Klein dress. I always wear comfortable shoes. I take time to do my makeup because that gives me confidence. And I prepare for a show by getting there early. I have to get there early so that it's not a last minute thing where you're running late. I have to allow time for traffic or train schedules. And I get there early. I don't care if it's even like an hour early, and give myself a chance to relax, unwind, see the space. If I can be in the space and use the mic in the space and hear how it sounds and see where people will be sitting, check out the light. I like to greet people, the people that are hosting it. And, I have some water. Lately I don't drink too much coffee before because it makes me too nervous. So I just drink water, but not too much water. I do my routine deep breathing, some stretches. I can do it in the green room, or if there's no privacy, I'll do it in the bathroom. Get into my body and feel like I'm warmed up, warm up my voice, warm up my body, and never drink any wine or anything like that. And try to talk to some of the other comics. I find out what the lineup is, where I'll be in the show, and find out more about the audience so what I'm going to do is appropriate. I don't want to do stuff that's not appropriate. And I think that's about it.
What's the best advice you've ever been given about stand-up comedy?
The best advice I got was to always stay in touch with the audience, connect to the audience. And the second best piece of advice is to slow down. Because you know the jokes, but the audience is hearing them for the first time. And they have to understand what you're saying, and the jokes have to land. And also not to step on your laughs. And be comfortable going slower than you think you should go. And to breathe when you need to center yourself. To stay present in the room. And not lose focus. Other good advice includes have fun. And enjoy the humor. Enjoy the jokes. Enjoy the reactions to the jokes. And be curious about when people don't laugh. Because there's information there too. And also to keep writing. You may have a lot of stuff, but there's always either make the stuff you have better or keep writing new stuff. Keep your act alive and relevant to your daily life. And it's a living thing. I mean, your act will, get solidified, but keep writing new stuff. And don't forget to laugh every single day, no matter what's going on. Just find a way to laugh every day and help other people laugh. Share your smile with other people, help make other people feel better about life.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given about stand-up comedy?
I think the worst advice I ever got was it was in a workshop, and the teacher suggested a punchline involving a rock group that I really didn't know anything about, but they said it was a funny joke, and that I had to Google the rock group, listen to their music. I wasn't comfortable with the joke. Didn't fit my voice, my person, so I tried it a few times and then I dropped it. So I think it's important to be true to who you are, the good, the bad, and the in-between. And don't go far afield just because a teacher in your class or someone in your class has an idea for a joke if it's not something you're comfortable with or familiar with. And you should write about and talk about things you know, so you have some authority. I think that's important. Don't just do any joke that doesn't fit your persona. Try to do things that fit your persona. I do remember good advice. I think it was from Eddie Brill. I took a class with him years ago. He said something like, once you find your voice and your persona, it's like the floodgates open and a lot of material comes out. And I think I've been doing that, and I'm going to keep doing that, because I'm a very specific type of person, ethnically, age-wise, education-wise. The more specific, they say the more specific, the more universal, which seems like a contradiction, but it's really true. And So I'd say, although the question is what's the worst advice, that's a way to get to the best advice, which is be true to yourself and do material that makes sense and makes sense to you.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about stand-up comedy?
I think the biggest misconception is that you can get your jokes from sort of stock joke books and that it's easy to do, to perform. And, now there was a time when people used stock jokes and stole jokes, sort of the Borscht Belt, Milton Berle era, but now people are writing jokes based on their own stories and their own lives, and it's much more personal, which I think is just great. And of course, it's not easy to do. You want to make it look easy and comfortable, but it takes a lot of investment of time and practice to get there. And I think another misconception about stand-up comics is that they're all depressed. I don't think that's necessarily true. Although I've met some that do seem depressed. But out of that, that's where the humor comes from. But I don't think you need to get too invested in that idea. Suffering, I think we want to minimize the suffering that we have in life. So I wouldn't cultivate depression or despair as a way of coming to jokes.
What do you believe is the key to success in stand-up comedy?
I think the key to success is to keep writing and write to your own voice and opinions, and don't settle for things that are not really working, but keep trying to improve them. And be honest, and turn your B stuff into A stuff, and keep practicing, because the more times you get up at bat, you learn every time, every single time. And the practice is really necessary. You grow every single time. Every time I do a Zoom show, a Zoom mic, or an in-person mic, things get better. The wording gets better. Things get cut that weren't working. And I like feeling more comfortable on stage. Also off stage. You don't want to bomb on stage, but you also don't want to bomb off stage. In other words, be nice, be flexible, be polite to people, be patient with people. There's certain etiquette. Be nice at clubs, be nice to the bookers, be nice to your fellow comics, be nice to your fans. Someone's rude, doesn't like you, just keep moving forward. You're not going to win everybody at every time, but keep an eye on the long. It's a long game, so keep an eye on the long game. Try not to make enemies. I've been in a couple situations where I work with people, or I paired up with someone to do a show. About 8 years ago, and she ended up taking over the whole thing. We were supposed to be partners, and she started collecting money at the door. I wasn't monitoring it. I'm sure she took more than her share, and just took the whole thing over, and it didn't end well. And try to avoid situations like that. Try to be aware, and don't let one other person just handle the money. And, be smart and protect yourself, and try to avoid conflicts or hurting anyone's feelings. Be nice to everybody.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle that stand-up comedians face?
There's the obstacles of competing with other people for stage time on shows, on open mics, and bookings. It's very competitive. There's so many comics out there. And then there's an internal obstacle. You keep pushing and pushing, and sometimes you wonder, where's this all leading? What's the prize? What is it all going to add up to? So the biggest obstacle, I think, is the fear of things not working out, and you just have to persist. You can't give up. It's like any craft. You want to keep getting better, and you want to keep networking. So those two prongs, improving your product, because we are a product after all, and some people will want to buy us and some people won't. We don't appeal to everyone's taste, and that's fine, you know. But I think there's external obstacles and internal obstacles. The reality is that there are a limited number of spots, and you just have to believe in yourself and be as funny as you can possibly be. Be easy to work with. Be flexible. Be nice. Be professional. And don't give up. Do not give up, no matter what.
What do you think sets stand-up comedy apart from other forms of comedy?
Well, stand-up comedy is a solo performance. You write your own stuff and you perform it alone, unless you're lucky enough to be in a duo like Martin and Lewis, or Stiller and Mira, or Burns and Allen, any of those great pairs. You're on your own, as opposed to being in a sketch group or an improv group where you work with a team. And I like being independent. When you work with other people, sometimes people let you down, or they're not professional, or they're not as committed, or they're competitive. Those things can happen. But I like the control you have of your own act, your own performance, and I think that's wonderful. I like that because I know I can depend on myself.
What are the benefits of stand-up comedy?
The benefits are that making people laugh is a great gift to people. It's very important. It's not a frivolous thing. You give a gift to people, you make people smile, entertaining people, especially in this world with all the problems. Very beautiful thing to do. It's fun, so it's satisfying. You meet a lot of interesting people, both the other comics you work with and the audience. Members are smart by and large, and have a lot to say. And I've always enjoyed talking to audience after. I made some friends, good friends. And the benefits, it's a solo thing, so you can do a lot on your own. You don't have to schedule rehearsals with 10 other people. And you can do it in a variety of venues. You can get your own bookings. And it builds confidence and poise. I found it a big confidence builder. And also it has helped me in other things like public speaking. And I've done acting and auditioned, and I feel very comfortable on stage. And I love being on stage. And I think stand-up is a wonderful art form, and you always need more material, which is great, so you don't get complacent and you keep writing. And as your life changes and more things come up, it's also a way of going through life and working through things that you're going through and finding the funny in things. Try to find the funny in some dark situations. It's very therapeutic. It's really very therapeutic. I tell jokes about my marriage and my divorce, which was unpleasant at the time. It's really, when I make jokes, I realize just how ridiculous the whole thing was. I mean, I went through it anyway, so I might as well get some material out of it. So it's kind of a salvage mission. You know, like your house gets destroyed by a tornado and you go through picking through the rubble. and the rubble turns into jokes that I can use on stage. So it was not all for naught. And let's see what else. There's so many great things about it. I like that you can do it on Zoom during the pandemic and in Joke Zoom. I like that you can go to a mic. I always meet interesting people there. And it's a living, breathing thing. And I just hope and pray that the gods are smiling on me and will help me keep writing, stay healthy, and come up with more stuff and get good enough so that I can get better bookings. I'd love to be on a talk show like The Tonight Show or Colbert. I'm also branching out. I've worked in hospitals, and I've been reaching out to write jokes or perform jokes in a hospital setting, which is certainly not your typical setting, but like in the auditorium where they do grand rounds or give lectures. Not for patients, but for other staff. I think that's a market that they would really enjoy my comedy.
What's your process for writing jokes?
I have a few ways that I write jokes. Either something will come up spontaneously and I'll write it down in my notebook. I always carry a notebook with me. Always, always. I have a little red leather notebook that I keep in my purse and a bigger notebook on my desk. So if something pops into my head, I'll write it down. If I see something funny, I'll write it down, like a funny sign, you know. Another way is if I'm upset about something. Remember the morning pages in that book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron? I get to stuff I'll write about something that I'm upset about or sad about or confused about or worried about. Just write down. I put the date, the time, and I just write. And just the act of putting it down on paper makes it feel less frightening. I feel more in control. And the more I keep writing, and I'll just write whatever comes to mind, what they call free association, what Freud called free association in analysis. And, things pop up. Nothing's too weird or too strange or too outrageous or too hostile to put down there. And sometimes you vent. It's a way to vent and get it out of your system. And sometimes you get ideas of how to solve it. And even if you don't get a solution, you do feel better afterwards because you faced it. I don't like to feel helpless. I don't like to be stuck with a dilemma or a feeling or a hurt and feel helpless about it. So writing things down, nobody can stop me from sitting down and writing about it. And that helps me get a handle on it. I try not to be too sensitive to slights in this world, but we live in a world where you got to be thick-skinned. And when things happen and you have to sort them out, or things happen with your kids or your ex or your other friends and family, I find it helpful to write about it. Or things in the world that are upsetting, I write about it. And it's very therapeutic, and some jokes come out of that. For example, we're living in a time where there's a big upsurge in anti-Semitism. I find this very frightening. And there was an incident in Central Park where a guy was pushed. A Jewish guy was pushed from behind. He fell forward. He broke his nose, broke his hand by some creep, who yelled Kanye 2024. And this kind of ugly, terrifying stuff, terrifying things are happening. And there was a menorah outside a synagogue on East 93rd and 1st. And somebody smashed it up overnight. And, I wrote down how I felt about these things and what I'd love to do. And some funny things came out of that. So, write about what's going on in the world, what you could do about it, what you'd love to see done, let your imagination, and funny things come out of it. I mean, we need some vigilantes out there. Remember the guardian angels that were led by Curtis Sliwa, and they would walk around with those red berets on the subways, and you always felt that a little safer when they were around. Well, I think we need some Jewish vigilantes, or we need the guardian. I'd like the guardian angels to come back, but we need people around town to intervene when bad things happen and fight back in some way. And anyway, things along these lines. What could you do? Throw matzo balls. I'm not a violent person, but there does come a point where I believe in justice, and I like fighting injustice. I would never break the law, but you want to feel like you get your fighting back. So, maybe I should walk around with a sack full of hard matzo balls. And if he's somebody doing something anti-Semitic or destroying property or hurting somebody, just like start getting them with those matzo balls, maybe a slingshot. I don't know. We got to do something. Anyway, so to answer the question, process for writing jokes, things that come up spontaneously, then things that I see, like in New York, you see crazy things, hilarious and crazy things all the time. And I write them down, or I'll take a picture, weird graffiti or someone in a weird outfit, ridiculous things. And then also writing to process things that I feel strongly about, even things that I like, and keep pushing to get some punchlines out of there through exaggeration, hostility, surprise. So those are 3 things I do.
What's the most important thing for a stand-up comedian to remember?
Well, I think the stand-up comic has to remember that they're in a relationship with the audience. They're not there to recite a list of jokes and get a pat on the back for clever jokes. They're there to interact with the audience. It's a dialogue where the audience responds in laughter and hopefully not heckling. And if you never lose sight of that, I think you'll be okay. If you can win over the audience, that Johnny Carson saying, if they like you, that's 80% of the battle. So stay in tune with the audience, stay positive no matter what happens. And when they don't laugh, just keep going. You're not going to rise and fall on one joke, on one response, but let the whole thing be a success. Win the room. Try to win the room. And give the audience a positive experience. And that's your gift to them, for which you get paid, and there are many other rewards of feeling like you did a job well. Don't be thrown if something doesn't work. Don't be thrown whatever happens. If someone heckles you, we know how to handle that. If a joke doesn't work, you could either call it out and make a joke on top of that. Johnny Carson, if a joke bombed, he would say something, look, folks, some of these are duds and there's nothing I can do about it, which is hysterical. So you want to go the distance and stay positive and stay in contact with the audience. I think that's the most important thing overall. Win the room.
What do you think are the best techniques for dealing with hecklers?
The best techniques for dealing with hecklers, well, there's a few things depending on the heckling. If you can ignore them, and maybe it's not that loud and only you hear it because it's near the front of the stage, you can ignore them pleasantly and keep going on. Or if it's too loud and everybody's heard them, you could repeat what they said. And then I've heard comics recommend being empathic and saying, like, well, lean into it and say, I'm sorry you feel that way if they said something negative, or, try to empathize with them, kill them with kindness, and not get hostile. And if it's impossible because they're being hostile, you might say something like, well, let's, I'm sure the rest of the people are here to hear some jokes, so let's move on. And then if they're really impossible and boorish and drunk and disruptive and horrible, I would look out for the bouncers in the room and just say, "Hey, can you give me guys? Can you give me a hand with this?" You know, there's many ways. So you don't want to turn the crowd against yourself by putting them down so badly that the audience doesn't like you. Um, you can say something like "Thanks, Dad," or some of the stock lines like "I don't come to where you work and heckle you while you sweep the floor at McDonald's." That's kind of a stock thing. But Tig Notaro says, just say, "Gee, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm really sorry you feel that way." And what can they say to that? You've empathized with them, and hopefully they'll shut up.
What do you think are the biggest mistakes that stand-up comedians make?
I think that some of the biggest mistakes are to rush, to go too fast, usually from nerves, and then you can't really understand what they're saying, and they don't give you enough time to absorb the jokes or their persona, and they just keep barreling forward and don't leave time for the room for the laughter. They don't let the jokes land, and it's hard to keep up with them. And another mistake is to do material that's not appropriate for the audience, like blue stuff for a conservative crowd. Also, not being prepared, winging it. You want to be loose, but you want to have a sense of your lines. And I think it's perfectly all right to have your set list on you and take it out of your pocket if you need it, but be prepared. I think the audience can see that and appreciates that. And another mistake is people turn hostile. If they're not getting the reaction, sometimes comics will get hostile and put the audience down, like, you're too stupid for my jokes or something. And that's not a good idea. You never want to insult the audience. You need them. They're there for you. And, try to be accommodating and pleasant and fun. It's got to be fun. If you lose your cool, you feel bad for yourself, or you get angry, they're going to not enjoy watching you. Another mistake is going over your time or going too short. It's better to go too short than too long, but you also have to do your time that you're contracted for. A real pro counts. I saw a comic on the cruise ship recently. I just got back from a cruise. He did to the minute. He did his time to the minute. And I watched him closely. He looked at his watch a couple of times, but I think he had an alarm set, which I couldn't hear. But supposed to do 45 minutes, and he did 44 minutes and 50 seconds. It was to the minute. And I saw both shows. Total pro. And he paced himself. And, deliver the goods. Be a good journeyman. Give a good show. Take pride in your work. Don't blow it off, even in a small venue. So let me see. Any other mistakes? Forgetting your act. So look at your set list. That's important. And remember where you are, and don't offend anybody. Don't insult the club either. Like if you think the food is bad or the club is crappy, don't say that. Don't insult the town where you're in. Don't insult anyone in the audience. Don't insult the staff. You don't know who knows whom. Make it work. Try to make it work.
What is the best way to learn stand-up comedy?
The best way to learn stand-up comedy, I think, is to take a class like Rob Chaffee's class. I've also taken classes with Joe DeVito, which I would recommend, Ross Bennett, which I would recommend, Eddie Brill, Steve Rosenfield. These are all good teachers. Joe DeVito is very strong in terms of helping you with writing. Another good way to learn is watch your favorites. And watch your favorites over and over again. And watch them and yourself with the sound off. Because you watch your body language. Lately I've been watching myself with the sound off, and I noticed I was telling a joke and then I put my right hand up. I don't know why I did that with the palm facing the audience, and it was almost like a stop. I wasn't even aware of it. And you're not telling them. It was on a laugh. Like, I wasn't trying to tell them to stop laughing. It was just a gesture, but it could have been read as stop. So watch yourself with the sound off and try to be aware of your physical mannerisms and what you're doing. Make sure it's in sync with your words. Certainly don't raise your hand in a stop, palm out gesture. I didn't mean to do that, and I don't do that anymore. But and try to stay relaxed. And I like to watch Joan Rivers videos. I have a few that I always watch. I like to watch Wanda Sykes, Rita Rudner, Jerry Seinfeld, 24 Hours to Kill, this latest one that I saw him do at the Beacon. I like to watch that. I like to watch it with the sound off. Look at his energy. He goes from one side of the stage to the other. The energy's just great. He takes a breather. He gets a sip of water. I like Jim Gaffigan also. Boy, he's funny. And so smart. So damn smart. I didn't mention Jim Gaffigan before as one of my favorites, but he sure is. And my God, how prolific. He has, 6 or 7 one-hour specials on Netflix? Just keeps churning it out. Churning it out. And I've been at the Gotham Comedy Club when he comes in and he does material that ends up in a special. His stuff is so smart. He's so intelligent. He and his wife work on this stuff. He's so lucky to have a wife like that. Where can I get a wife like that? Or a husband? Can we clone Jeannie Gaffigan? Anyway, you got to have... I wish I could find a comedian that liked me enough to be my boyfriend and write with me. But anyway, Jim Gaffigan, prolific, writes all the time, super smart. It's funny. I find him funny because he talks about how fat and lazy he is and how he's eating all the time. You know, he's not lazy. He's the opposite of lazy. And isn't it wonderful the way he takes... he has 5 kids and he takes his kids on tour with him in their own bus. They must have a lot of nannies and assistants to coordinate everything. It's just amazing to me, the whole machinery that he's got going there. It's just amazing. What a childhood he's giving these kids, and he's making so much money, like 30 million a year. I pray to the universe to send me a male comic that likes me and likes my stuff, and maybe we can write together, perform together, or he'll just help me write my stuff and perform and be a support system. You know, you need a support system. No one can do this alone. It's just impossible. But the best way to learn is study from the best. Like Amy Schumer is one of the best. And she's so gutsy. She and her sister are very close. The sister helps her. And she's ingratiated herself with a lot of terrific comics like Colin Quinn and Dave Attell, people at the Cellar. And she picks their brains for help and for information. And, she found a husband who totally devoted to her and watches their son when she's performing. I mean, you needed a crew, a whole team. And I need to work harder at getting this team. I don't know if I should go to the Comedy Cellar and sit at that table in the back. I've actually done that. I went up to Colin Quinn and I said, "Hi, I'm a comic." He said, "I know, you look like a comic." I gave my name, but I don't know if he remembered me. I mean, I really have to do more networking, breaking through. I think if I keep writing and practicing and then I catch a break, things could happen for me. Anyway, you have to do all these things to learn and improve your stand-up work. And networking is a big part of it. You learn from your peers. You learn from your mistakes. And we've all made them.
What do you think is the best way to improve as a stand-up comedian?
The best way to improve, I believe, is to do it every day. Every damn day. And I've been doing that. I've been writing every day. I've been performing every day. Today I did a Zoom mic through the F Comedy Club. Yesterday I did an open mic at the Broadway Comedy Club. Tomorrow I'm going to do another open mic. Try to get out every day. Every damn day. I don't care how cold it is. You need 3 sweaters, put on 3 sweaters. No excuses. Just get out there every day. I also have cards made up. And when I meet people that like me, if I feel they like my stuff, or if they approach me, if I like their stuff, I'll introduce myself. I say, let's be friends on Facebook. Be around people that like you, that you like. Not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to even look at you. But find your people. Find your people that like you, that get you, that have a feeling for you. Sometimes the sincerity of a stranger, like yesterday, I was at Broadway Comedy Club. It was an open mic. I paid my $5. I got 6 minutes. I watched this guy, and then he was in the audience. He watched me. He came up to me. He says, I like your stuff. Your stuff is smart. You have a good mind. And I liked his stuff. And even though he's a more of a beginner, I could see the seeds are there, you know. And I said, you got a lot of presence. You got a good material. And I said, let's friend each other. And on Facebook. So you got to be out there and keep writing, keep performing. People have ideas. I ask people for ideas. Can you help me with certain jokes? Ask for help. You want to accelerate the process, rather. It takes forever anyway. Just keep going. Keep going. I'm keeping a log, and I'm performing at least once every day and sometimes twice because I love it. And to do otherwise would be to cheat myself. And yes, I'm an older person, but so what? All I can do is what I'm doing right now. And ask for support. You know, ask for support. And don't be discouraged if people are not interested, because everyone has their own struggles. I'm learning to lower my expectations of people, even family members. I have 2 sisters. They've never seen me in a comedy club in my whole life. We're not close. So what? They're doing their own thing. I have friends that care about me, and that's fine. You know, make the best of what you have wherever you are and keep going. Another way to improve as a stand-up comic, work on your speaking voice. Give some thought to your speaking voice because audiences have to listen to you. I think that's something I need to do more of because I tend to speak up here in my throat, as we often do when we're speaking, up in our throat, holding our breath in our chest. But when you listen to a pleasant speaking voice is a big asset in stand-up comedy because people are listening to you. So you want to have a pleasing voice. So I'm trying to work on maybe speaking more down here in a more resonant, pleasant voice with a pleasant vibration. A squeaky voice can be hard on the ear or off-putting. But pay attention to your physicality also, because it's visual. You're up there. They're looking at you. I say, look as good as you possibly can, whatever you have to do. You know? And be open to feedback. Don't shut it out because you can learn from that. You want to be the most appealing product or package. I always admired Rita Rudner. She always looked great. She always wore great gowns. She wore gowns on stage, and she would change her gown halfway through. She pulled no punches about looking good. She didn't look schleppy or raggedy. And the best way to improve, I pray a lot for help in this field because I need help. No matter how hard you work, you still need luck. And I try to make my own luck, but sometimes you need divine guidance. So I've been praying lately for God to help me. And you never know. I hope she's listening.
What has stand-up comedy taught you about yourself?
Stand-up comedy has taught me about myself that I have a good sense of humor. And not everybody has a sense of humor. You think they do, but a lot of people really don't think that way. and don't have a sense of humor. I have a good sense of humor, and it's something that I'm grateful to have. And I know that I can create jokes. If I persist in the writing and the study of writing jokes, I can come up with jokes persistently and consistently. That hasn't run out. That muscle hasn't run out. And I'm happy for that. So I've also learned that I'm very persistent, and I've also learned that I really want this. Now, I don't need to do this. I've worked really hard my whole life. I don't come from money. I've worked slavishly my whole life. Even when I had small kids, I went back to work, and I've held jobs, and I've done moonlighting at night, and I've been in a situation as a single parent I had to save. My point is, financially, I'm secure. I'm not wealthy by any means, but I'm financially secure. I don't have to do anything right now, thank God. But I love this stuff, and I wish I'd hit it big in my 20s, but I was always doing the psychiatry thing. If I could live my life over, I would not have done the psychiatry thing for as long as I did or as much as I did. I would have done it more part-time, because at the end of the day, I love performing, and I really hope that I can get better gigs, better paying gigs, better venues, a higher profile. I want to pass at some clubs. I'd love to pass at the Comedy Cellar. And what has it taught me myself? You know, you only do, this is hard, so you only do it if you really love it. And I know that I really love it. So that's what I've learned, that I really love it. And that's what I should be doing. We get one life, and God knows it's fleeting, and you can get a bad illness anytime along the way. And what a rotten deal that is. I really need to speak to management about this, because I don't agree with it. But you understand what I'm saying. It's just, if you find something you enjoy doing, do it all the time when you're young. I wish I'd started earlier, but at whatever stage you are, make the most of it now, which I am doing.
What motivates you to keep performing stand-up comedy?
I like the joy of coming up with a good punchline. It makes me happy, makes me feel good about myself, makes me feel creative. And there's a sense you never know what you're going to find if you keep digging. So what that motivates me, the possibility of what I'll come up with. I also love what other people come up with. I love going to Joke Zoom. And we throw out a lot of ideas. We plow through a lot of stuff, good, bad, or indifferent. Like Rob says, don't judge it, don't criticize it. It's all on the way to something better. And I was in a mic where, there was this guy who was always saying very depressing stuff that I didn't find funny. And then one day he came up with something that was so funny. And I thought, my God, it's like panning for gold. It seemed to me like panning for gold. You go through all the mud, the silt on the bottom of the river, and you get mostly dirt, useless dirt, but now again you find some gold. So the challenge of that, the possibility of that, makes me very happy. It's the carrot on the stick for me. And when I write a joke, I like to write jokes on Twitter, because I'll put the whole joke down, and then I have to edit it down to 144 characters. I really like that. It always comes out better. The editing, the brevity, having to edit it, it's very satisfying. It's like a puzzle. Some people like crossword puzzles. Some people like Sudoku or any of that. I don't like any of that. I like writing jokes. That's a puzzle I like. I like Comedy Wire. I've written thousands of jokes on Comedy Wire, where they give you a headline, just a real headline. Of course, they lean on headlines that have double entendres and things, but I've come up with some really great punchlines from that. It's very satisfying. I'll do that for hours at a time. That makes me so happy. So what motivates me? Coming up with funny stuff. Also, I like the challenge of going to a gig, doing the gig, satisfying the customer, doing well, satisfying the client and the audience, and getting paid is great. The money I've gotten from the gigs is the best money ever. The sweetest money ever, you know? I would love to work on a cruise ship where they get $3,000 for a week, and all they have to do is 2 1 hour or 2 45-minute sets and 1 half-hour thing. That's 3 shows, and maybe a few other bits of work on the ship, but I'd love to do that. So what motivates me? The dream of getting better gigs. I'd love to be on Colbert. That would be my first choice, to get on Colbert. And then the second choice would be Tonight Show with Fallon. Anyway, these dreams motivate me. It's so much fun. And I also have a dream of meeting my next ex-husband at a comedy club or a venue, because whoever I marry, he has to have a sense of humor. Has to. Doesn't have to be tall, doesn't have to be super skinny, doesn't have to be rich. No, he needs to be financially secure or stable, but he does have to be funny. Because as our bodies deteriorate, at least if you're funny, you can get through it. If I can laugh at something, I can get through anything.
What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about doing stand-up comedy?
Someone who's thinking about doing it, I say do it. Take a class. A class has the structure and format. There are many good classes around. And there are classes for ranked beginners and classes for people with more experience. Before taking a class, I would watch the comedy of the person teaching the class and pick somebody whose comedy you like, whose sensibilities align with yours. Don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. Pick somebody you like. I once took a class with somebody, like, I really didn't like the person and I didn't like their comedy, but it was at a popular club. So I signed up, and it just wasn't a good fit at all. And the jokes he wrote for me weren't great. And I didn't even like his actor. As I got to know him, I didn't like him as a person. So that was dumb. I didn't do my homework. Don't take just anybody. Shop around, talk to people, and watch their act. So that's somebody you want to be around and whose jokes suit you and make you laugh. And don't hesitate. Don't let fear get in the way. Bring your fear with you. Don't wait till you're not afraid. Just bring your fears and anxiety with you, because it never goes away completely. And a little fear is good because it means you care. So don't wait till you're not afraid. Jump in and do it as soon as you possibly can, and then you'll have time to work on it. You're welcome.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we did not cover?
I would like to add a few things, and thank you for throwing this question in there. I forgot to mention Jackie Mason and how much I love Jackie Mason's comedy. His delivery, his rapid-fire delivery, that, like Joan Rivers, just pulls the laughter out of you. Gilbert Gottfried, love Gilbert Gottfried. Mario Cantone, a comic that I kind of grew up with. I knew him at the old Improv on West 44th Street. Hysterical, great comedian. Elaine Boozler, great comedian. All the, early pioneers. Adrian Tolsch, no longer with us. Talk about starting early. I did start in my 20s. Because I started medical school when I was 20, because I skipped 2 grades. I skipped 8th grade and I did college in 3 years. So I did buy myself a little time. And then I started hanging out at the Improv in the 80s. So at least I did get started early, even though I wasn't going out 5 days a week, 7 days a week. In any event, I mentioned some of these other comics that I like. Alan King, I would say if you want to do it and immerse yourself and really give yourself a chance and do it every day. I do it every damn day. And if there are days when I'm not feeling well, or I'm tired or preoccupied and I can't write, or don't feel like writing my own stuff, I make myself watch a Seinfeld special, or Tom Papa, or Trevor Noah, or Ilana Schlesinger, or Amy Schumer. I watch them, and there's always something that you can do in the direction of your dreams. And Jokesum has been a tremendous asset in this pandemic, a miraculous thing that the great, great human being and comedy impresario Rob Chaffee created. And I'll be forever grateful to Rob Chaffee for what he created and his ongoing creativity, like creating this comedy reset thing is great. I really enjoyed doing it. You inspired me to keep thinking and writing, and I can't thank you enough. And here's wishing you all the best, Rob Chaffee, for doing this. I recommend everyone look into Jokesum and participate to whatever degree and as much as you possibly can. I keep looking for venues where I can get stage time. I perform in, this is another thought. Keep looking for venues. You might not get up at Gotham or the Stand Up New York, but maybe I can do senior centers. I've been doing those. Some of them are paying gigs. Can do libraries. I did 2 gigs at an assisted living facility where my ex-husband is. I created those opportunities. You always learn. I did an assisted living facility where everyone in the audience was really old, and most of them did not respond with any facial expression, let alone laughter. A few here and there, a smile, a chuckle, a head nod. And I thought to myself, how do you do, if you can perform for this crowd, you're going to go the distance in a more lively crowd. So I did the distance. I went the distance. I did the time. I tried to keep connecting. And here and there, I broke through to someone here, someone there, a smile. And some people afterwards who had not laughed or even moved a muscle or made any facial expression said that they enjoyed it. So you can't always tell, but in any event, I thank you for this opportunity, and I hope you'll pray for me that I get some recognition in my life, preferably during my lifetime. I'm not into this posthumous bullshit like Van Gogh. Screw that. He only sold 1 painting in his lifetime, even though his brother was an art dealer. So if you think you don't have success, Anyways, thank you for letting me talk about myself. It's one of my greatest pleasures. As a psychiatrist, I spent years listening to other people, and now I'm very happy to find my own voice. And thank you for this opportunity that you've created, Rob Chaffee, and thank you for listening. If you're friends and supporters of Jokesum and you're listening to this, if you like what you heard, if you want to get to know me, friend me on Facebook, looking for new friends and people to love and share life with. And if you think of any punchlines for my stuff, send it along. Thank you. Bye.
I've been your host, Rob Chaffee. Don't forget to laugh today. It's good for you. Comedy Reset Spotlight is a podcast that brings you today's freshest and funniest comedy creators. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to hear more.